12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast, episode number 41, but this is season number 2. And how I'm doing it is how many episodes I can get in within a year, and that's pretty much my season. So the goal is to get more than 40. And like I said, this guest I have, we've been, I was on his podcast, Recovery Nugget podcast, and we've been trying to get together ever since, but our schedules have been conflicted. But like I said, I'm definitely happy to have him on this evening. And like I said, before I get into the introduction, do some house cleaning. 12 Faces of Sober, 12facessober.com. You can order not only 12 Faces of Sober, a signed copy of my book. You could also get the merchandise on there. I have hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and tights for women, workout shorts for women, coffee mugs, etc., in a variety of colors. So like I said, it's not just the standard black, gray, white. It's a variety of of colors. So like I said, if you got some nice shoes you want to match with, definitely get that. Once again, that's on 12facesofsober.com, as well as you can purchase the book on Amazon. Just type in the number 12 Faces of Sober, and you should be able to find under Kenneth L. Watson Jr. And like I said, I also have my children's book that will be coming out a little bit at the start of the summer about playing baseball in San Diego, as well as the completion of my Army book. And hopefully those will be coming out before my birthday in August. But like I said, I'm trying to shoot for sometime in July. So either or, they'll definitely be out soon. But like I said, this guest, I had the honors of being on his podcast, as I just mentioned, Recovery Nugget podcast, and I believe you said that's on Spotify. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, it's on Apple and Spotify and on Anchor. So Apple, it's at Recovery Nuggets Podcast. That's my Instagram handle, and you can go to recoverynuggetspodcast.com. Okay. They're all there. You can play them straight through the website as well.
Okay. Well, like I said, welcome to 12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast. My apologies. But so welcome to the show. I really do appreciate you taking out the time to talk about recovery and how helpful it has been to you. And so enough of me talking, you can go ahead and introduce yourself, let us know where you're from and how long you've been sober.
Yeah, man. Well, appreciate you having me on. And, you were on my podcast a couple of months ago. That was actually one of the first interviews I did. And I was looking at the stats today, and yours is in the top 3 or 4 episodes that's been listened to. So I've got a lot of good feedback from your episode. And I in Wilmington, North Carolina, near the beach. And I grew up in Northern Virginia, outside of DC. And my clean date is July 8th, 2006. So I'm coming up on 16 years being clean from drugs and alcohol. And it's been a journey because it's not where it started. The first time I got clean was in 2001. And it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because everyone knew I had a problem. And they always say, like, we're the last one to know we have a problem. Mm-hmm. And that was me, because I was trying to figure out a way to use and drink successfully. Okay, if I just drink this one, or if I just use this one, but it just never worked out. But as far as the using, I mean, I always felt different when I was a kid. I just felt like I didn't fit in. I didn't really know what to do with my feelings. And so, I used sugar way before I used drugs and alcohol. I used more of whatever masked the feelings that I didn't understand how to process. You know what I mean? And I grew up in a good home. Mom and dad were married for almost 30 years. And then, once I got out from under their kind of care, I kind of went buck wild, and it started with partying and drinking, and, it didn't get bad at first. I mean, I graduated college, I went to New York, but I got caught up in the lifestyle of, I thought by going to New York, I was going to be like rich and famous as an artist, and my ego was wrapped up in it and all this other stuff. And so then when I got into the party scene up there and found a certain drug that let me stay up all night, it went downhill pretty fast from there, and, but that the addiction part of it, I don't I don't talk about it as much these days because I've been in recovery so long. I really like to talk about the things that help us stay clean or stay sober, whichever your choice is. Like I'm a 12 stepper. Um, I still have a sponsor. I still work steps, go to meetings, I do service work. And, but to qualify just to the listener, like, I don't ever want to forget that last day that I used, and I remember living at what I would say is an animalistic level of existence, like I just remember being so ashamed of being seen as a drug addict that, like, right before I quit, I had a roommate that I was so ashamed to see him because I'd been doing drugs for days and days and days that just to not look him in the eye, I would just use the bathroom in a cup and wait for him to go to work. And then I would come out.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because I was so isolated and ashamed of how my life had turned out. And the worst thing is that I did it to myself.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so that level of existence was so far from the trajectory I was on with school and accomplishments and things like that. So it was just wrapped up in guilt, shame, fear, and self-centeredness, ego. There was so much that was that I was being deceived by, but it was me telling me these lies, and the disease kind of running rampant in my life. And what I found was that eventually friends and family moved on. They wanted to help me, but until I wanted to do it for myself, nothing really changed.
Right.
So, the first time I got clean, I did it for really my friends and my family. They knew I had a problem. And so I was living with my dad and I went to treatment. And I just remember riding in the truck with my dad, and the sun was kind of setting that day. And I could feel his pain, but I also knew my pain was just so great that I didn't know what to do about it. But just to feel the disappointment coming from the dad who had really kind of showed me how to be a better person.
Mm.
And I got so far off track that I was really just lost. I was a lost young man, and I just remember, like, looking into that sun thinking, like, how did I end up here? This isn't what I wanted for my life. But there was also a part of me I was about 27 at that time, and I wasn't ready to give up the party. I got addicted just as much as the alcohol and the drugs. I was addicted to the fun of the party because it was so different than the kind of the tough, not tough upbringing of home, but it was just very, I don't know. I just didn't feel like I fit in there, and it was like being set free.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got hooked on that, then it was just as bad as the addiction to the alcohol and the drugs. You know what I mean?
So did that? I'm not to cut you off. So
yeah, go ahead.
Did that change more or less from, because you said, now, did this pick up when you went to New York, or was this something that was already like?
Oh yeah, it definitely picked up when I was in New York because, I was working in fashion and around film and celebrities. And so, I just kind of got wrapped up in that lifestyle, like going to after parties and late night and open bar and drugs delivered. I mean, in New York, I used to get drugs delivered on a car service, and that was back when beepers were popular, but still you'd call them, they'd beep you back, or vice versa. Then they'd pick you up in a Lincoln Town car, you get in the back and it was a guy in a suit and you got whatever you want. So it made it a little bit too easy for someone who was wanting to do it a lot. You know what I mean? So and I mean, it just was kind of like the perfect storm for me to just get wrapped up in the addiction of it, and then, but it's one of those things that when I could quit, I didn't want to. And when I wanted to, I couldn't, and that's a tough place to be once you get there, because deep down inside, my spirit, my soul was like, this isn't who you are. But my brain is telling me, get another one. Let's do it again. We'll just do it different. We'll do half this time. Mm-hmm. And you try to negotiate with your mind or your disease or your addiction, however you want to call it. But it always wins. I saw a documentary one time and it called The Disease of Addiction Slick.
Mm-hmm.
Because Slick could always talk you into trying it one more time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And also too, like I see the similarities as well, because like at 27, that's when my problems started to arise in terms of drinking and run-ins with the law. And that was my first stint of going to rehab. And it wasn't that I wanted to go to rehab. It was something that was forced upon me, because at that time, as you just mentioned, I wasn't ready. You know, it was the exact opposite. I still wanted to drink, and I pretty much drank for roughly about another 8 years. And that's tough. I mean, it's tough. It's kind of like one of those things where, and you also mentioned about you know, the family wanting you to at one point get clean and sober. And then the opposite, you know, when they're kind of like tired, like their hands are up, like, okay, we can't do this anymore because you're not taking it serious yourself. So I can attest that that is very true. You know,
Yeah.
it's not to denounce or to badmouth family, but like I said,
No.
they have lives too. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, to see you down is draining them. You know what I mean? And I noticed that
Yeah.
just within my own family. It's like every time I made those mistakes, it was like, man, we thought you were going to do it this time. And I'm like, I just wasn't ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that, you know, I mean, I was captain of basketball. I was class president. I grew up in a small town. So, you know, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do very well. You know, I wanted to go out and be successful and do all this other stuff. And I was the first person in my family to go to college and graduate and all of these titles and roles that I was playing. When I hit my bottoms, it was so far from the path that I was headed. And it was my choices that put me there. You know, no one made me do that stuff, but the pull of addiction is so powerful that it's cunning and baffling, you know, and you really don't even understand why you do it once you're in it. You know, so to break that chain it took some time. And one of the biggest gifts I got from that first time was learning that 12-step programs existed and there was other help out there. So when I did get ready to do it for myself, when I was beat down enough to want to do it for myself, that was kind of the gift of desperation for me. Was that, okay, the family's kind of pulling away, my best friends are pulling away, I'm without a job, you know, I'm in a bad relationship and things are starting to get pretty bad. So it became a choice to ask for the help and go to a meeting for me, and then ask for the help, but then allow the help. You know, I can't tell help how to help me because I got there with my, you know, my choices. And then when I got to these rooms, these people showed me how to live a different way of life. You know what I mean? And then as I went on, I started to do step work, and I really was introduced to David, you know, because the steps helped me realize that, you know, through my inability to accept personal responsibility, I was creating my own problems. And that's from the literature. That's not me, but I love that line because, you know, I don't know about you, but I had addict financing, you know, in the end, where there was this much money that was supposed to go for food, bills, and whatever, but a lot of that went to the addiction. And so the other stuff suffered, you know what I mean? And so when bills were late and utilities got cut off, I didn't have anyone to blame but myself, you know?
True.
And, you know, as I went along in my journey, you know, there were some things that happened to me that, you know, like I was molested when I was 5 by a babysitter. And then, you know, that led to some certain types of trauma that I didn't have any understanding of what to do with that. But then as I got older, I sought attention through sex and validation through that. And then I became a promiscuous person. And so the guilt and shame of that wrapped in with feeling like a failure and things like that, it started to spiral and it got worse and worse, you know? And so then Here's what happened after that, though. Continuing on the journey, I was able to realize that the person that did that was, I think she was 16, and when I was 5. So where did she learn that? I mean, did something happen to her? So then I was able to go from like a blame victim situation to, yeah, that shouldn't happen to me. And I was introduced to that energy, the sexual energy. But then on another level, I was able to look at it from a bird's eye view and say, well, what happened to her? Why would she do that if something didn't maybe something happened to her and she just was kind of repeating a cycle? And so I was able to move from where I started to compassion and forgiveness for her and for myself, and then let that healing begin. But that's not where it started. You know what I mean? It took time away, and it took a lot of like writing and sharing about it, and then processing that stuff over time, because a lot of the reason that I used was not knowing what to do with my feelings, and then having trauma from certain things that I didn't know how to deal with. So it was a coping mechanism. And then it ran rampant on me.
Right. Yeah. Which is usually is the case. I mean, like I said, some of the things that I was dealing with, especially towards the end of my drinking, was just processing, life after the military. And like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? Do I choose to go to school? Do I go back to work? And then I realized, it's like you said, like I had to address some of these problems and issues that I had been facing during that time that I was drinking, because the drinking started before I was even in the military. Yeah. And so once I started to figure that out, and just like you said, addressing some of these issues from my past of stuff that I grew up with and that I witnessed, it was, now I'm starting to understand, like, okay, maybe this is the right thing, is that I need to process all of this without any type of, anything in my system, because it was, I mean, everything kind of hit me all at once, especially when I got sober. Like I said, I was homeless to, getting ready to file for a divorce, all within like a time span of like 2 or 3 months. And it was like, I had to, seek some type of help in terms of like speaking and like trying to get some kind of better understanding of like, okay, is this the right thing? Trying to remain sober, like, because I didn't, like I said, I failed at this, at least, 3 rehabs I failed at, on top of hundreds of times of wanting to quit or try to quit, and that didn't last but for a day or two. So trust me, I understand, and that's one thing that I do appreciate, is one, for you sharing that, because a lot of times, we don't necessarily address those traumatic type of things that may have happened to us, that we didn't understand, okay, how we may have picked up a certain type of habit. And it's like, okay, there's no true clarification. So I appreciate you sharing that, for sure.
Oh yeah, man. And that's the thing, is like, my dad is a very hardworking blue collar guy, right? But emotionally, he was not able to always express with me a communication style that let me communicate freely. Because he came from, basically, he was on his own from 15, and his mantra is suck it up and deal with it, or stuff it down, and if something happens, get mad, or just do it like this because I'm the dad, that kind of thing. And we have a good relationship today. But when I was a kid, that didn't work for me, because, like, I'm an artist, I'm creative, and I'm very not emotional all the time. But back then I was very sensitive, and I'm still a sensitive person. And so it created this environment where I never felt like I could express myself without getting shut down. And so when I was out of the house, then I was able to be free. So that was another part of it. And I'm not blaming any of this on my dad, but in hindsight, I can see why there were certain areas of my personality and emotional well-being that he just didn't have it, and it's okay. Like, he basically was on his own from 15. So he created his own life from scratch. I mean, he still works hard today. He lives down in Florida, and he cuts grass in the neighborhoods, and he's almost 72,
Mm.
you know, and we talk once a week. And, you know, it's just, he showed me so many different things as a man in other areas that I still use today, as far as like, you got to take care of your bills first. You know, if something breaks in the house, fix it. Don't wait.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff that I learned from him that I treasure today, but there was stuff emotionally that he just didn't have, you know?
Right.
And so, but I had to stay clean and sober long enough to write about this stuff, process it, talk about it. And then it helps me communicate with other people like you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that story about what happened when I was a kid used to hold power over me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share it with whoever's listening, because the freedom at first was just the freedom from drugs and alcohol. But once I put that away, what were the things that were really holding me back?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, if drugs and alcohol ran me to recovery, what ran me to drugs and alcohol in the first place? That's where the real change starts to happen, when I can get in there, and as uncomfortable as it is, really get in there and say, wow, what were these patterns that were driving me to that stuff in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that took some time. That took some time to really take a look at, and I've been able to make amends to people and do living amends with my family and friends and show up. I mean, I don't put like 70 cents in the gas tank anymore to get across town.
Mm.
Like all these, right? Just,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And these, it's funny, but I used to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't screen phone calls anymore, because I don't owe credit card companies, and I'm not running for, I don't owe the dealer money or any of that stuff. So I just don't screen calls. Like, and if people call me, I call them back,
Mm-hmm.
because I've really worked on being present in my life, and being a part of other people's lives, because in the end, it was me in a room by myself, peeking out of windows. And the antidote to that is to be present in my life, um, be around other people and communicate, because when you're isolated, you're not communicating.
Right.
I was not communicating. I wasn't talking about feelings. I wasn't even willing to address them, or like even entertain that maybe I was doing something. And so all this stuff that I've learned in recovery is the antidote to my disease or my addiction, however you want to phrase it. But there's certain things that I still have to do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
like, I don't do this alone. It's I can't
right.
have this conversation without you.
Right. That's true. And I was just sitting there like, pretty much just had a flashback, going back to like that year, the very first year that I got out the Army. And the reason why like I try to talk about that is because just something that you said, isolation. I tried to go back to work like literally maybe a month or two after I got out the Army. But because, in a military environment, you're always constantly around people. And sometimes, it could be a couple hundred people that you're around, on any given time. And so for me, it was like, okay, I don't really want to be around people. So I understood that, okay, the only way I could do that is not go to work and just sit at home and more or less like think about what I just went through in the 6 years of being in the military.
Yeah.
And how many times I could have lost my career due to alcohol because of situations, just like you said, getting to the root of the problem as to why drinking became a problem. Because that's when, and I could tell you, it was more or less once I got my bachelor's degree in 2003, and I struggled. Literally every job I got after that was not paying me what I thought I was worth. And then it was like, okay, how am I supposed to survive? How am I going to pay those bills, as you just mentioned? And it was like, okay, I got student loans and X, Y, and Z, despite the fact that, yes, the military eventually paid for it, but that took some years. And so, being someone that's fresh out of college, 22, 23, 24, all you see is you got your life ahead of you. And now you're trying to figure out, like, how am I going to survive? Like, jobs are paying. This was in, like I said, 04, 05. It was like $7 or $8 an hour for some jobs starting out. And I was like, how am I, Like, how am I supposed to truly survive off of this? And so I tried jobs but then it was like, for me, it was like, I worked all these years in college to get a degree. And now I'm not even in that field. Like I was working in management for a rental car company. And so it was like, how can I, you know what I mean? Like I went to college for 5.5 out of 6 years. And here it is. I worked all this hard to get these grades. And then like, okay. And then like, it was a change of environment. I go to Arizona for the second time, no luck with jobs. And it was like, okay, let me go apply for radio positions. I couldn't even get in the door. I couldn't even get interviews with some of these radio stations. I mean, from country to Spanish
Right.
radio stations, I was trying just to get in the door and couldn't even get in. And so that's where it was like, okay, why did I go to college? I could have, as people say now, is I could have got a labor job and probably making a whole lot more money right now than what I did off of having this bachelor's degree. Yep. And that's something that I dealt with because I chose the route of going to college over, going, I worked like part-time jobs in college, but I didn't take that route. My mom was like, you need to go to school. You're the last child. So let's see if you're successful. And that's what ended up happening. But like I said, I agree with you when you have to like really think, like, when was it truly a problem and when did you become the problem in the mix of it? So yeah, it definitely is a challenge. But like I said to the audience, that's what's most important, is to be able to think and dig deep. Was it something that was traumatic from your past, be it childhood or some type of abuse, or it could be just something where, in my case, it was college and how life was going to be after college, and then how my life was after the military. So, but at least this time when this last time I did the route and I checked all the boxes when I was in rehab. But I knew that the ultimate goal was survival once I got out of rehab. And a lot of times people are, I was ready to just jump off, and not in a figurative, like hurt myself, but just, I was ready to just jump off the curb and ready to go. And a lot of times, it takes a little bit longer. But like I said, the way that it worked for me getting sober is definitely different from others. So, but to hear yours is, like I said, as long as, you're clean and sober today, that's what's most important. But you can be able to relive and talk about those things from your past. So yeah, I definitely respect that. Now, let me see. Now, now you mentioned some, and I want to kind of go back to this question, but my brother, he was in New York, and I've heard stories of just the lifestyle. Now, do you think that if you were in a different environment, do you think that you would still have had those problems? Or do you think it was because of that environment, that fast-paced lifestyle, that kind of consumed you? And, as you might as well say, it got the best of it.
Well, no, I can't blame it on that, because once I got to like my junior and senior year of college, I was really starting to experiment with drugs and alcohol more.
Okay.
And like I said, like, I was studying fashion, so we had fashion parties in college. So I was already kind of, already hooked on the fun and the clubs and all that stuff, and going to raves and partying. So I don't know that the environment would have mattered, because I was already into that lifestyle, the music, the clothes, the drugs, the late nights. And, one thing that recovery's taught me is I really have to take responsibility for my choices, and I can no longer blame people, places, and things for how I ended up. Okay. I just, when I was younger, I would say, oh yeah, it was the environment, but my best friend, he still lives up there, and that wasn't his experience, because he worked hard and he still works hard. So there's a different mentality to someone that could be successful up there and not get, hooked into that lifestyle. It's like some people are able to moderate. I just wasn't one of them. Once the switch was on, it was on until I passed out, basically. And that was for me,
Right.
And, now my life's pretty simple. I've been at the same job for 10 years. I live in a thriving recovery community, and I'm in a healthy relationship. I'm a homeowner, have my own vehicle. I go on vacation. I just got back from the mountains and trout fishing and fly fishing where there's no phone service, but it's just out in nature. And, in the mornings, I don't hit the snooze button and run off to work. Like, I get up at least an hour and a half before I go to work, because part of recovery for me is like, I never gave myself the space or the time for me. Right. So like, if I get up early and have coffee and have a conversation with my girlfriend, do my reading and then journaling and take some quiet time, I am actually committing to myself first. And then when I go to work, I'm committing to that time there for the people that pay me to be there. But I'm committing to myself first and getting grounded before I go out into the world. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's a big shift. But that didn't start either when I first got clean and sober. I mean, it was like, I was just kind of a wild man trying to learn some new skills. And, but the journey of recovery really is just that. And that's why it's, each day it's a new kind of experiment. And as long as I don't pick up, I've got a chance.
I like that. And see, and it's funny you said that about the fishing, because me and my dad was literally just talking about it. And he's every single time he's like, so when you gonna throw a pole out there in the water? I know there's water everywhere around you. And I'm like, yeah. I said, don't worry. I said, once I get settled, I am going to throw a fishing pole out here and just see, because I'm not like no professional or anything like that. I'll probably, because my brother-in-law, he told me, because I don't like touching the fish.
Right.
He told me that the t-shirt trick, cover the fish and then unhook it like that. But yeah, it definitely is something that I guess, to kind of to segue into this is that, picking up things that you've done now that you're sober. You just mentioned, waking up a little bit early, having a coffee, having that conversation with your significant other. And my lady, she tries to do that with me, but she gets up super duper early, like 4 a.m. sometimes.
Yeah, that's early.
Yeah, that is early. That's military time for me. So sometimes I try to every now and again, but I know that she has a routine, and I think I need to get up and do it, because we did a breathing exercise actually a couple evenings ago, and I know she does it in the morning. So I think I'm gonna have to start doing that a little bit more often. And so, what are some other things that you have found yourself either picking up, like as far as like hobbies, activities that maybe you did while you were out there, or maybe you didn't? What are some new things that you're picking up now during your recovery process?
Yeah, well, I'm an artist. I've been drawing since I was 4 or 5. So even some of these prints that are behind me are some of my artwork. And in my I have an Instagram that says David Clement Art. So I've always done that. And I do fishing. But also I've tried a lot of new things. I've taken classes at the community college to better myself. I've taken design classes, AutoCAD, and some of the stuff I use, some of it I don't. But, there's a nonprofit here in town called Dreams, and it's a after school youth program for at-risk youth. So 98% of the students are on scholarship. So instead of leaving school and just going home, these kids actually get to go to Dreams, where they teach music, dance, the arts, sewing, pottery, and computer design. And one of the things I did probably about 6 or 7 years ago is I taught there for 2 years. So I taught kids sewing. I taught them murals. I've actually put my art in the local museum here in town. I've taught drawing classes on the iPad. So I've really tried to challenge myself with this gift of recovery to learn new stuff. And then also, when someone offers me opportunity, to show up for it as well. I've went into a prison and shared my story when I was going through the roughest time in my recovery. I mean, I went through a divorce in recovery and I stayed clean. And it was painful because, I don't have to get into all the details, but there was an affair, and it was painful, and it was people in recovery So that was tough, but I made a commitment to myself to go to work, come home, and not use. That was as simple as I could keep it for a while. But my commitment to not destroy myself one drink or one bag of drugs at a time anymore is so strong that I just wasn't going to let this setback mess up my sobriety. You know what I mean? It's that important, because if I had a used, then it all would have gone away anyway. And so what happened was I went into a dark place, and it took a while to come out of it. But once I got so sick of being stuck in that part of my recovery, I had to ask for help again. So there's like another level of surrender. So it's not just you surrender, you put the drugs down and everything's good, which it can be good. But there are other times when, like, I lost a grandma and I was totally at peace with it because she had told me she was ready to go. But then, like, I lost this pet, my cat, and I cried that day the most I'd ever cried in my life, because no matter where I was at in my life, that cat never judged me. You know what I mean? Right. And so I stayed clean through that. So there's, it's like, we have to continue to surrender. And sometimes health issues come up and we want to fight it and resist it. Like I had plantar fasciitis one time, and then I had to get my gallbladder out, but I stayed on the path and focused on recovery as well. And like being able to share with your network of people that are in recovery, whatever you're going through. I mean, if there's a name for it, that means somebody else has been through it. And I'm not alone. Once again, just because it's not involving drugs or alcohol anymore, if there's a name for it, somebody else has been through it.
Yeah, that's deep right there. Most definitely. and just to touch on what you just said, I literally, my divorce was completed. I think 3 months into my sobriety, 3 or 4 months into my sobriety.
Yeah.
And I, to keep myself busy, like you just mentioned, I got into school. I got, I enrolled in my master's to get my master's degree. And like I said, that I guess the keeping myself busy, keeping my mind occupied on something totally different than that topic of the divorce, it helped. And even the eye opening as far as the health issue. So, there are definitely similarities. So ladies and gentlemen, we're not making this stuff up. We go through it. My grandmother, she passed away a couple years ago, and I didn't get a chance to go to the funeral. But I know that, as you mentioned, I want to share this because I was at peace when she passed away, because of the fact that she got a chance to see me sober before she passed away. So that was my ultimate goal, because during that time of those dark days and dark periods, she might, I might, call like any other grandson, hey, how's it going? And I heard you done did this. I heard you done got into that. And it's like, yeah. And she's like, don't worry, it's going to happen. You're going to get it. And like I said, for her to see me sober, like I said, I was content, and it took a lot. But
yeah, I mean, the gifts of recovery are so much better than we would have drawn up for ourselves. I mean, the stuff that I would have written for myself when I first got clean, I would have shortchanged myself. Like I just got off the phone with my mom before we got on here, and she asked me to come and help her put some mulch out in the yard because she broke her hip. She's in rehab. She's doing the physical therapy, but just to be able to answer the phone and not need anything but to help her. I mean, that's a huge gift. And then like this year, my dad gave me a card for my birthday this past year. And it said, when you look at your son, there's many years where you just see a young man or a boy or your son or this, that, and the other. And he said, and then it said something to the effect of, and then one day you look at him and you see a man. And I mean, it got me, it got me because it's finally like he's seeing how recovery has changed my life. And the gift that I love is that they don't have to worry about me anymore. Like if they call and I don't answer, I call them right back. when I was using, there was a point when I was holed up in a hotel room. I had stole money out of dad's safe. He went to work. I watched him leave. I went in there and I stole money out of the safe. And this is how sick I was at the time. I only took a portion of it, and then I would like crumple the money up and try and fluff it to make it look like it was more money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the insanity of where I was at. Mm. And he would have gave me the money if I really needed it for something positive, right? Mm-hmm. But during that time I was holed up in that hotel room, I had 98 missed calls from friends, family, and loved ones trying to find me and just say, come home. You know, we're willing to help you. But I was just so lost at that point. And it's just one of the things I just don't want to do to anyone that cares about me anymore. I don't want to not answer their phone call, you know. It's powerful, man. It's to see. And here's the other thing I want to share is that for so long, I thought people wanted me to be rich and famous and a well-known artist and all this other stuff. All they wanted was for me to be happy. Mm. Yeah, and be okay. You know what I'm saying? And that's my life today.
I second that. I second that because like I said, it, you know, when I was deep in alcohol, I was very negative, very angry. You know, like I said, since getting sober, I know that I've smiled a whole lot more, you know, and, you know, I have something to be happy about. You know, before it was like, oh, it's this, it's that, it's money, it's this, and, you know, relationships not working. I don't have those problems anymore, you know, and there's hope in life. You know, I wake up each morning, I look forward to what the day brings to me, not dreading like, oh, I don't want to go put on this uniform for the Army today. You know, I don't want to go do this, you know, pretend like not pretend or be a soldier today. I don't want to do that. You know, now today I get up, I want to be sober. I want to, you know, focus on my brand. Then this is what I can do. Or if I don't want to deal with it for a couple of days, I don't have to, but I know it's going to still be there. But like I said, the most important thing is the health. Like you mentioned, I've lost a lot of weight since getting sober, you know, and, you know, my diabetes is almost under control. You know, a lot of things that I didn't take serious when I was deep into drinking, you know, and it takes just that, like I said, that true life-changing moment of just giving it away and understanding like, okay, your body still functions, but you still got to take care of it. If you don't, your body's not going to be well enough to function, you know. So
no doubt. I mean, that's the vessel we ride around in. And you know, you asked me about some other habits that or hobbies that I picked up. You know, meditation's another one that I've spent a lot of time doing. And, you know, it started with doing a minute at a time. And then over time, I started reading about it and learning about it and then going on meditation retreats. Okay. And, you know, meditation gets this rap that like, oh, we're supposed to float and be and all this stuff. But that's not been my experience. My experience is that it helps me sit and be with me. And then I get to observe the thoughts that come through, you know, and learning not to get attached to thoughts. You know, because part of when I get wound up is I'm attached to a negative thought. Oh, well, your body doesn't look like it should be, or, you know, you're putting on weight, or this person said that to you. And then I get hooked. But if I can just acknowledge the thought and just realize it's just a thought, it doesn't mean anything. It's just, it kind of came through.
Right.
Then it's more of like an observation of how my mind works. And then, but if I stay sitting and nothing happens, that's part of meditation, is just the observation of, you know, me and my thoughts. And like one thing I always share is that if you do the dishes by hand, right, and you do it on a consistent basis, I can see where my spiritual fitness is, right? Because if I'm in there, I'm going, nobody helps me with the dishes, and I'm like slamming them down and all that. And then the next day I come in, I'm in a grateful mood and I'm feeling good, and I'm doing the dishes, I'm carefully stacking them. I'm like, oh, I'm grateful I have food to eat and these plates in the kitchen. Well, what changed? Did the dishes change, or the person I brought to the dishes change?
Person.
That's me, the same person. So it's like that observation and the meditation has really helped me kind of like, okay, it's not always them or the situation. Sometimes it is me, and I can be aware of that. So
True. Now, before we go, I
yeah.
wanted to ask you, how has social media helped you today in recovery?
That's a good question. I didn't realize there were people on Instagram, mostly for me. I mostly use Instagram as far as the recovery community.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize as many people were out there talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so during the pandemic, my home group, probably the second week of shutdown, I started a Zoom home group, and it's still going strong 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I started to realize was that there are people trapped at home that were probably wanting to get sober or clean. And my 12-step group wasn't the only way people were doing it. And then I started to see some people online that were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, well, wow, this is opening a whole different world to me as far as recovery goes. And then I started to learn about trauma and people in recovery, 12-step, no 12-step, using recovery books. I guess they're calling it, what is it called? Quit literature, that kind of stuff. So the way it's helped me is that it's helping break the stigma of addiction and alcoholism, and the conversations are being more and more prevalent in the world,
Mm-hmm.
which one of the biggest things that keeps people using is the isolation. Therefore, the social media is this other tool that people can use to learn about different styles of recovery, because each person's path in recovery is their own. You got to find what works for you. And I think that just seeing that other people are still talking about what they're going through, how they get through it, is a great tool for a person in recovery.
Mm. Definitely, most
I
definitely.
mean, that's how we met. That's how we met. So
true. And I second that as well. Is that I when I started initially, it was just the personal account, and then it was like, okay, I'm starting. At first, I was kind of nervous, and people told me, they're like, yeah, just start, following pages,
mm-hmm.
You don't have to necessarily interact, just see what people are posting, the type of,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a quote or a video, whatever it is. And then, like I said, with time, it was like, what, they're thinking the same way as I'm thinking. They're having some of the same feelings, some of the same experiences. And it was like, what, if they're able to speak out, why not me? There's no difference. It's just that now it's just me sharing my perspective of sobriety and my road to recovery. And then, like I said, now being able to create a platform to have people come on and share, their journey and things that's working for them today. That to me is what this is all about. Is, like I said, for us to have a network, a platform to be able to come together, share our stories, share some tips, share some new hobbies potentially to dive into, and then just see what works for us. And then, like I said, because it's an individual thing, but as we navigate through the sober community, it's a group effort. Because like you said, that there's people that I could reach out to day and night and we'll get a response. Or if I'm just having a bad day and somebody feels it, okay, somebody will shoot me an email, and then I'll be like, okay, hey, I'm doing better now that you checking on. So it's the simple stuff like that. And then last,
definitely,
I also forgot to tell you, thank you for purchasing 12 Faces of Sober.
Oh yeah, man.
I forgot to say that early in the introduction. Like I said, it from the heart is much appreciated, because, like I said, more people that get their hands on it and see what a portion of what my life went through as far as drinking is, I'm very happy. Like I said, my goal is just for one person to read it. So the more who reads it, the better off it is.
Yeah, and, I enjoyed it. It's good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And with that, I know you mentioned early in the podcast where can people follow you, and as well as where people can stream the Recovery Nugget podcast.
Yeah. So the handle is at Recovery Nuggets Podcast, and that's on Instagram. The website is recoverynuggetspodcast.com.
Okay.
I have about 29 episodes up now. Some of them are mini nuggets where I talk about my experience with meditation, journaling, going to your first meeting, dealing with using dreams. I have authors like yourself on there, and therapists. I've even, the Recovery Nuggets is really about different types of recovery. Like I have a Dr. Joan Ifland was on about food addiction.
Okay.
And I have a trauma specialist episode. So working with EMDR, and also people just on there sharing their stories. So, give it a follow, but it's on Apple and Spotify as well as Anchor. So it's pretty cool. I was looking at the stats earlier. It's been heard almost 1,000 times.
Okay.
And it's been in like 20 countries so far.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, even in the Ukraine, it's been played in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Peru. So the analytics are pretty cool that people around the world are reaching out and searching for recovery. So, and you're a part of that, man.
So I appreciate it, most definitely.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you coming on, David. Like I said, the information that you shared is definitely key and vital, especially someone that has some time under their belt, and still living proof that, keeping things as simple as possible.
That's
and
right.
Holding yourself accountable for those mistakes, but those mistakes don't have to define who you are today. And most definitely, like I said, I learned, as much as I can from each guest, and you're no different. So I definitely appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing. And before we go, I want to, go ahead and, leave it with this, if you don't mind, leaving the audience with a nice recovery nugget.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for one thing that I've learned is that I have to have something to look forward to. So if you're early in recovery and you don't have a lot of money or whatever early on, just make a plan to go out for coffee one day. Okay. Something to look forward to, and then also I was a drunk dialer when I used to drink. You can turn that into a recovery asset by recovery dialing. So, but it takes practice and consistency to reach out. And what I've found is that when I ask for help shows up.
That's what's up. Like I said, David, thank you so much for coming on and being the first guest on season 2.
I love it. Cool.
Thank you. And once again, you guys can check out David and all that information as far as the Recovery Nugget podcast. I will make sure to have that information in the description on YouTube and other platforms as well. Like I said, 12facessober.com, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, 12 Faces of Sober. And like I said, David, once again, thank you so much for blessing the show and sharing your story.
Thank you, Kenneth. Have a good evening, brother.
You too. Thanks.
All right, take care, man.
You too.